Sarah Furuya, welcome to the Tokyo Living Podcast.
Thanks, Sam. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. What an absolute delight.
No, I really appreciate your time. For listeners and viewers, perhaps if you can just start by giving a bit of background on yourself. I know you are a podcaster in your own right, a very successful one, and have a fantastic show in which in a recent episode you had a friend and colleague, Angela Ortiz, interview you. And so if listeners and viewers want to find out a little bit more about Sarah, or a lot more about Sarah, and how her background, both personal and professional background, has influenced her current business and the way that she goes about things, I'd urge you to listen to that episode, but also all the episodes that Sarah has done on the Legend podcast. Is a really fantastic show. But if you could, like we talked about off air, just condense that a little bit and give the listeners a bit of background on yourself and what brought you out to Tokyo, no, brought you out to Japan.
Oh, thanks, Sam. I think we probably have quite similar stories to some degree because we've both started businesses up here and we're both like part of the fabric of the communities in Tokyo and beyond. But I'm originally from near Liverpool in the UK. Nobody would know that place. So I just always say Liverpool. It's about 4 miles out of Liverpool. And I think that had a massive influence on me growing up because it's such an iconic city. And I originally, interestingly, wanted to be something close to what you are. I originally wanted to be a doctor. So, but I really wasn't cut out for that at all.
Why is that?
And so
what did you? How far did you get? Did you just sort of study some of the sciences leading towards that,
yes.
and then got turned off, or what?
Yeah. Great question. So I got as far as interviews and offers when I was 18, 19. And my first interview for medical school, I just looked around and realized these aren't my people. This is not for me. I'm very, very creative, and I think that something like studying medicine requires something so incredibly detailed and process oriented in addition to your smarts. I just don't think that I would have been able to survive that with my kind of wild mind, if you like. So I went on to study psychology, human psychology and human biology, along with all the other failed medical students. I say that jokingly. But
some of them studied physio.
And a lot of so a lot of people go on to study physio, pharma, ophthalmology. The human biology, human psychology. There's lots of people out there who go on to do that. And still now, I think that the calling was really to work with people and to help them in their lives somehow. That sounds a little bit cheesy, Sam, but I think that was really the calling. And I also was raised as a Catholic. I say a lot about this in the podcast that you mentioned, my Legends podcast. But I wanted to be a priest as well. So I feel like a Catholic priest, but unfortunately the Vatican hasn't said yes to that yet for ladies. Right. So I think that the marriage between wanting to be a priest and wanting to be a doctor kind of has landed now in coach. And then who knows what's happening next. So basically I lived in the UK until I was 29. Okay. And when I was 29, again, I was managing a sensitive information bureau, liaising with the police for a telephone company.
Right.
And I just and then I had a massive car accident on the way home from my friend's wedding and just thought, what am I doing? I've always wanted to live abroad. I've always wanted to do something different. So I thought, right, now's the time. Like, when you've had something like that happen to you, one, your life flashes before you, literally. And then secondly, you've got quite a lot of recovery time on the sofa, not moving much, thinking. I was fine, by the way. It was just a lot of whiplash and bruising from the seatbelt and bruising in my knees and stuff like that. It wasn't, I wasn't in any danger in the end, but I did have to take time off work. And it was at that point I thought I need to move, and went and got myself over to Japan, as many people do, on an English teaching program. So I was teaching kids in Kanagawa area around here. So that's, for anybody who's outside Japan, it's like it's the prefecture, which is kind of south and west. South and west of Tokyo. And it was brilliant. I learned a lot. I came for 1 year. I thought I'll learn Japanese in 1 year, and then I'll go home and I'll know what I'm going to do next. But little did I know that I was going to be bitten by the Japan bug, move to Tokyo, find and fall in love with a wonderful man who I've been with for 20 years now.
Wow.
And here I am, aged 51, still here, still entrenched in the Japanese culture, etc. And so I did 4 years of English teaching. Wasn't for me. It was never my, I was never a teacher previously. It was never the thing I wanted to do. And then I went into corporate training. And that's how I got myself to here, because I got bitten by the coaching bug while I was in that company, which was a brilliant company. And we did a lot of trainings. I was working with adults. I was working with people who could, had a high level of English competency. So we really, really able to get into the kind of nitty gritty of business life. And the main client was Microsoft then.
Right.
And then so that was brilliant as well. I was working with everybody from the leadership team to the new graduates coming in, and it was just brilliant. I absolutely loved it. But also there was this little voice inside myself saying, you want to start your own business. Yeah.
And did that sort of, was that always there, or was that something that came out during that process where you're working for another company in the coaching role?
God, that is a great question, Sam. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I don't know if it was always there. I think a wish to work independently was always there. And I think I tried my best to work inside companies, but I don't think I'm well suited to that. I actually think I'm suited to visiting and then out. I don't think I'm well suited to sitting in an office with people. And I'm fine with it. My husband loves that. He likes that lifestyle, and I think that's a great lifestyle. But for me, it was just, I have a lot of energy that I think needs to be in other places. So that's a really great question. But I did start to fantasize about it about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I started coaching. I started to be coached at that point. So I got my first coach because I was kind of unhappy. I knew that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I loved the face-to-face, the one-to-one stuff and the workshops I was running, but I didn't love being inside the company.
Okay.
And I just knew that. And so, and that wasn't anything to do with the vast majority of the people in there were just terrific. But it was just that fit. God, this is such a good question. Okay, you should be a coach. You already are. It's
because it's actually just like, I hadn't thought of this as I was asking, but sort of making me reflect on that as well. Because for me, like, opening my business was, it happened at a whole sequence of events that included retiring from competition in karate, because we basically started 360. I got the keys to this facility the next year. It got so. Basically, end of 2011. So this is where it's going to flip. You said you're scared of.
I know, I'm scared of interviewing you. I'm desperate to interview you. Go ahead.
but for me, that's like end of 2011. I was 30. I proposed to Lani. I retired from competition. All this was planned, and then started my masters and started 360 the next year. So somewhere in that time, and this was after the earthquake, which was sort of like a big emotional shakeup for all of us. Yeah, I had my last fight in Australia a couple of days after. The earthquake was on the Friday. I fought on the Sunday. It was going to be my last fight in Australia, and I ended up winning the tournament, but I was not in the headspace to fight at all. Lani was out here. I couldn't, like, it was like 5 hours before we could contact each other by phone. But anyway, that all was starting to happen, and so I'm thinking now that the seeds were sort of starting to say that I wanted more, that, working at the practice where I was great when I was competing. But once my competition career was over, I needed another focus, and just working as a private practice physio, as much as I loved that, it was probably not quite enough. And I think I was starting to realize that at that time. But obviously going from working with the security of a company to going out and doing your own thing is just such a massive leap. How did you feel? Yeah, how scary was that for you? And how did you actually get started in making that transition?
Well, this is, again, a brilliant question, Sam. So much like yourself, there's always a sequence of events. So I'd started being coached. I joined an organization called Furuya Japan, which is where I met Lani, actually, your wife, Alana, who is also one of, Tokyo's greatly admired entrepreneurs. And I think our journeys are parallel, basically. So at that time, I think there was you may remember there was a real wellspring of entrepreneurial creativity at that time, certainly in Fu Japan for empowering women, the networking organization. I was the president of that organization at the time, and there was a lot of really inspiring entrepreneurs in my network. And I would go along to these entrepreneur meetings joking, saying, oh, I only come for the food, but I was always listening and I had my ear out. And then I joined this coaching program with a woman called Catherine North. And then I just kept following the breadcrumbs that were being laid down for me. And then probably, about the same time Club 360 emerged, I'd already been introduced to your brother-in-law, Nathan, by a friend because I'd had a back problem. And then, oh no, a neck problem, I think, actually. And then Alana started Alana Jade. And so there was a lot of things popping up in the non-Japanese community at the time. And I think when you've got these things all bubbling up around you, it shows you the possibility, right? It shows you all the possibility and the potential. And I checked in with my husband and I just started thinking, I can do this. And I started taking clients on while working. So I was working my full-time job and taking on clients in the background. And every single moment when I was at Microsoft, because I used to actually sit inside their office in Shinagawa most of the time. So in between clients, I would just be listening to podcasts, watching videos, making notes, making plans, plan, until I just reached that edge where I was like, all right, this is it. There was a conference in New York that I wanted to go to, and that just felt like the right thing. It was called Rich, Happy and Hot Live with Marie Forleo. She doesn't use that branding anymore, but I just thought, okay, I want to go to this thing, and that's going to be the line in the sand for me. I'm very inspiration driven, so for me it was like that's the logical point for me to leave my job and go and do this. I already had paying clients who had come through Few. I was charging a ridiculously low amount just to cut my teeth and to see if I could actually coach people. And then of course you have to have that conversation with your husband or partner, right? I'm thinking of taking half our income out and starting something myself. But I had this strong sense that it was going to work because there was plenty of people around who were all on the same path. And I was studying, and I had all these mentors either here in Japan or people like Marie Forleo or other business entrepreneurs around, or coaches around the world, who I was able to keep my eye on and subscribe to and all that kind of thing. So there was just a lot of stuff going on around me. And I talked to my husband and I said to him, right, I'm thinking of quitting my job. I was absolutely doki, we say in Japan, right? My heart was beating out of my chest, and I thought, he's going to divorce me. That was my brain. He's going to just tell me no or leave. And so I played all that out with my coach, and I said to him, I think I want to quit my job and start my own business, and I want to fly to New York to this conference called Rich, Happy and Hot Live at the end of October. And what do you think? And he just looked at me and he goes, how much is the ticket for Rich, Happy and Hot Live? And I told him how much it was, like $2,000 or $1,000. I can't remember how much it was. And he goes, all right, I'll pay for it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, thank you. You just don't know what to expect, do you? And so then with his complete support and endorsement, I went off. Then I went back to my mum and dad's for 3 or 4 weeks. Again, it was, I jokingly said about learning Japanese in 1 year. I was going to build my website and have it all ready. But actually, I just wanted to hang out with my mum and dad. And I didn't have a website for a couple of years, I think. I just did it through word of mouth and stuff like that. But for the first 5 years, Sam, I'll be honest, I was more like a freelancer. So I registered myself as a sole proprietor. So this may be, I mean, there's a big difference, right? Between, you're probably set up as a KK.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Okay. So the listeners may already know this, but there's different levels of how you start your business. So sole proprietor is kind of the entry point one, where you just have your own small business. And then it gets to a certain point where, for tax reasons or whatever reasons, it's a good idea to open up what's called a KK, which is a Kabushiki Kaisha. And that means you're like a fully registered company. but it only makes sense at a certain threshold.
Mm.
And then there's one in the middle as well, which I can't remember what it is now, GK or something like
Yeah.
that. So I have always just been advised every year by my tax accountant, yeah, just stay as a sole proprietor for now.
Right.
So I registered as a sole proprietor, did 5 years of freelancing. So that was basically my previous company became my client. I would freelance for them. I had 3 women's profiles on my wall who I really admired. Like, I printed them off LinkedIn and I was like, I want to work with these people, or at least know them or have them in my. So one place I eventually became a senior consultant there, Canning and Associates.
Okay.
And there's their executive coach and senior consultant there. But I went in like entry level, humble, did every single, workshop, observed everybody, absorbed it all, and then worked my way up to that don't do much work for them now, but there was a woman called Anne Konishi who was the president there, and I really admired her. She was amazing. Sadly, she died of breast cancer in 2015. God bless. And then Elizabeth Handover, who runs Lumina Learning, and I became a qualified practitioner in Lumina Spark, which is a psychometric. So a bit like Myers-Briggs or something like that,
Yep.
where you introversion, extroversion, etc., etc. Really useful tool. And another one called Suzanne Price, and she runs Price Global. And
Yep.
I just really admired her as well. I mean, she's gone super global. Like her business is massive, but I prefer to stay as a boutique at the moment. But again, just became kind of friendly, kind of peer-like acquaintance with her as well. Kept bumping into her at your gym when I used to go there as well, I think, if I remember rightly.
She still comes in a lot. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So anyway, I thought I'd better mention that since she's your client. So that's the that's kind of how and then after 5 years, again, it's that kind of so for me, it's like that balance, a tipping point comes. So I'd started taking on more and more private clients, and then in 2016 something blew up, like the car accident. I think a relationship blew up. Like I was in a partnership with somebody, it blew up. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I just thought, F it, I'm going to start up my own 1-year program. And I just threw it out on Facebook or something. I'm taking on clients for 1 year. And at the time I was doing a lot of kind of like being the keynote speaker at Few, or, so I was quite well known. I've kind of withdrawn a bit now, but still, my face was around, if you like. And I got 8 people sign up. It was so cheap. And all it was I was like, 1-year program. It was just 12 coaching sessions, right? And then I would send them things and, and created like a nice little kind of community for us. 8 people signed up, and I was like, wait a second. If I started charging properly, this could really start to support me. And so then I was able to kind of flip from being like, so 50% in the private coaching and 50% like freelancing to flipping over to completely all private executive and workshops and stuff like that. So it's all my company now. It's all my delivery, if you like. I don't really work so much for other vendors now.
Yeah.
And of course, thank God, because the COVID took things out a lot.
Yeah.
And that takes us up to 10 years, Sam.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Understand you've just had your 10-year anniversary and had a big party to celebrate. And that's
right.
An awesome achievement. We're looking forward to hopefully getting to our 10-year anniversry next April. So
next April,
yes,
I remember coming to your 1-year anniversary actually.
Right.
At the gym.
Okay. Time flies, huh? It's amazing.
Yeah.
No, that's great. It's great to get an idea of that background. So obviously coaching, it's a very, 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 very broad term. And even within the business world, there's a lot of different approaches to business coaching. What makes you unique, and what parts of your professional and personal background have shaped the way that you coach? And then also if you just sort of talk a little bit about your philosophy and how you approach the coaching process.
So like I mentioned before, I always had that kind of calling to something, to like, so really just like a calling inside me towards something like being a doctor or being a priest or something like that. Not that I think I'm any of those things now. So coaching for me is, it's a partnership with somebody else, and coaching is also it's a technique of questioning. You have a lot of questions, but you don't give advice. You may make invitations, offers, and proposals, but that's more in a kind of mentoring space. So with coaching, you ask a lot of questions, and my own professional experience has been when people have asked me the good questions, that's when I really twigged on. When I was working at the corporate training company, we did somebody did a training once where we talked about the difference between teaching, training, coaching, and mentoring. And like that, again, it just switched me on. It was like, oh my God, coaching is the thing for me. And my philosophy is there are many ways to lead a life. So, and I sometimes say I coach at the edges, because I'm not, how can I say it? I do a lot of work in corporate. I work with people in the C-suite, C Nantoka O, C something O, or C something. Yeah. Like I work with those people. I work with directors. I work with managers. Nobody knows that because it's confidential, right? But at the same time, I am a little on the eccentric side. So my coaching philosophy is always to question everything in the way that I would like to be included. So, so for example, somebody might leave corporate and be starting their own business, but there's a lot of messaging coming through that their business won't work. I'm the coach who will say, is that true? Why not? Do we have evidence that it won't work? Do we have evidence that it will work? Is there any actual, legal reason why this won't work? Why you can't do this? If not, let's just take the next step. Let's take the next step. Let's take the next step. So that's something I think that I really strongly bring, is that I've always been on the outside of corporate, but on the inside. So I don't bring kind of the baggage of having been in there and forced myself into a really big box, because the company that I used to work for was an SME. It was a small medium business, not a enterprise business, which means like a massive business. So it was a small business. And so I don't, that's one of the things that I don't bring into the coaching space. So I'm always very how can I say, I always want to play at the edges with people. That doesn't mean they have to do it, but it just means that I'm able to kind of be very creative in how I question, in what I can imagine for them. So again, like as a coach, you can imagine something for somebody, but you can't get attached to, you can't be trying to pull them towards that imagination. So, if you said to me, I want to franchise Club 360, take it, Japan wide, and, you might have somebody say, well, that will never work in the province, in the, in the countryside areas. I would be the coach who would say, well, why not? Let's look. How could you do that? What would be the options, and really open that kind of stuff out. So the many ways to lead a life thing is that I'm just really interested in everybody in life. There's so many people out there, invisible people we don't see very much. I don't, I think my party would the party that I threw, which is very symbolic for me, for my 10-year anniversary, really reflects that. I had a lot of different performers. I gave out awards to people who wouldn't usually get awards. And PS, my clients often win awards. I can't be like, that's my client, because that's their business to say whether I'm their coach or not. But, and in fact, at the British Business Awards that just went by, 2 clients won awards as well. So, I'll take my 1% input into that, I'll have that. So, I am to some degree ADHD. Like I have ADHD.
Yes.
So it means you are at the edges all the time and trying to pull your edges in a bit.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is help people to explore their edges, whether they be neurotypical or not. Sometimes for people with neurodiversity, it takes a bit of special care. So I might point people towards you know, specialists in that area if they really need some real strong help with that. But for me, I want to help people to explore all kinds of things, and I think that's my philosophy. But also, if they're super conservative, I'll go to that edge as well. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to try and make people be creative or different or what have you, ever. That's not what coaching's about. But I'm just able to hold all that space around the edges and all the different ways to lead a life. So,
Yeah.
and I always have been. I don't know why. I
Yeah.
always have been.
Do you think that your sort of personal experience with neurodiversity gives you a bit of a, not necessarily an edge, but a different approach or a different view on people's people's issues or solutions to problems?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And it's only in the last few years that I've like realized I haven't got an official diagnosis yet, because I don't, until I want to medicate. This kind, I suppose it's kind of a Venn diagram here with yourself. Like, when would you send somebody to a doctor? It might be if they need some kind of medication, right? Because am I right in thinking a physiotherapist can't prescribe things?
We can't prescribe medication.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it's that kind of that like, until if I felt like the ADHD was preventing me from delivering on the things that I need to deliver on in order to keep my business afloat and to keep my life in order, then I would get an official diagnosis and then seek out some kind of help.
Yeah.
And so it's in the last 2 years that I've realized this. I think this is quite important, actually, Sam. So I'm quite happy to answer this question here.
Yeah, please.
But also, and this is a secret between you and me. I'm joking, because I'm well aware this is a podcast. But in order to find my baseline of my ADHD, I've actually stopped drinking altogether.
Okay.
And so that's an interesting thing to be on as well.
Yeah.
And up until, go on.
How long has that been?
1 month.
Okay.
1 month. So the last time I had a drink was at my party.
Okay.
And then it had been and again, it's a lot of different things. You know what Tokyo's like? It's a hotbed of alcoholism, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And also the other weird thing about Tokyo, and especially being expats, is you can kind of extend out your kind of teenage life into your 50s and 60s. And I just was kind of not down with that. But in order to find my baseline, I think I need to not have alcohol be in the picture. So I'm really, really, really serious about this. And also, you know, I think we're kind of veering into your next question about 10 years and how I'm innovating the business. Is like, I felt a really strong call to change the business as well. Again, it's just like, there's always this call. I think Angela mentioned this when she was interviewing me. She was like, I'm noticing like about every 10 years, you just go, whoop, 10 or 12 years, everything just gets thrown in the air, and we're there right now. And so I really need to look after my body, my interests, I mentioned I'm 51, so you know that just simple wear and tear on the body starts to happen, right? This maybe, again, if I was interviewing you, I'd start asking you about this now. But like, what
talk about how we don't use the term wear and tear anymore because we don't like the tear part.
Okay, thank you.
Connotation, so that's a good start. Wear and repair.
Wear and repair, love it. Wear and repair. So, but just, you know, every year your body's a little bit more worn and in need of more repair. So and different kinds of care. And I think I've just, at the same time as wanting to enter into my 11th year and wanting to change the business, I want to have like a clarity. I want to lean into the ADHD, because ADHD is it can be very disabling, but it also it's a terrific gift, because the amount of ideas I could generate in like 10 seconds is quite remarkable. So, but I need to be able to deliver on these if I want to go into the next level of the business, and also physically as well, find out where my baseline is, because, you know, like, one of my knees is going, maybe I'll be in touch. And you know, there's just thing, and my thumbs as well. you know, just like arthritis in the hands. I think I've not got a diagnosis for that either, but like just things that are happening, and I want to enter into the next, actually not just next decade, but like 70 plus, like what I'm planning for that now, which might
Yeah.
seem weird, but I
No,
really am
absolutely.
planning for that now. And I'll probably be working until I'm 70. So I want to make sure that I'm putting down some really sustainable um uh uh sustainable things, not just business wise, not just logic wise, but also to keep my attention
Sure,
and
sure.
to lean
Yeah.
really into my ADHD.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Wow, okay, that was interesting.
no,
That
that
went
was
where I didn't expect it to.
no, it was really, really
You're a
interesting
great
perspective.
interviewer.
I do want to sort of explore, the next, your sort of transition and the next stage in your business. Just going back to your coaching, though, I remember on one of the podcasts you mentioned that part of what you do is trying to work out what a person is tolerating.
Mhm.
And as soon as I heard that, it sort of resonated in terms of drawing parallels to what we do, and um, I guess coaching and I was going to say medicine in general, but let's just take physiotherapy or orthopedic physiotherapy as a specific discipline. We're trying to address someone's problem, which is primarily one of a pain experience
Yeah.
or a limitation in performance or a goal of increased performance. And so we go through all the things that might be influencing that particular problem. And let's take pain as an example. We have to look at all the different types of load that might be contributing to someone's pain experience, and then looking at what part of those are actually beneficial and what are detrimental, and what is tolerating or pushing in the orthopedic world, or the rehab or parts of rehab world. We have two types of people that you have copers that sort of push into the pain, and copers that push away from the pain. And often it's just about going in the other direction. So if someone is sort of pushing into it, and that's their coping option, then often we have to, well, that's a coping strategy. We often have to pull them away a little bit to let things settle and then build back up. Whereas other people that are sort of hesitant to actually engage with pain, and that they have some fear avoidance, then we go the other way and sort of push into that. So it's I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of analyzing what someone is putting up with, and how that might be contributing to their issue. But maybe if you have like a practical example, or just some more thoughts on that sort of philosophy as a whole, I'd be really interested to hear.
It's so similar in so many ways, and I think that the the notes I made here as you were speaking was about what are we addressing here? Is it limited performance? Is it enhanced performance? Do people have coping strategies?
Mm.
And so one of my qualifications is that I'm a systems coach. So we look at people in relation to themselves, their internal systems, and then the systems around them. And what I was thinking about with physiotherapy is like, so for example, if we were looking at my knee, first of all, you isolate that piece and look at it as is, right? So it'd be like, okay, what's going on there? Find out what the pain point is, and so on. And then and then you have to look at it in terms of the full person. And then you have to look at it in terms of that full person in their existing system.
Yep.
Right. So that's exactly the same in my situation, which is okay. So if it's limited performance, if there's something limiting somebody's performance, is it something inside them, like a ghost or a trigger? So we call them like a ghost role. So if you think about, say, somebody who worked at Nissan, right? So I used to be one of the coaches at Nissan, is like Carlos Ghosn is still a ghost in that system. So it could be that somebody feels really, really down in the dumps about their job and they're not feeling very motivated. And we identified that the reason they joined was because they admired Carlos Ghosn so much.
Mm.
And now that dream has been shattered, then at least we can start to work with that, what we call a ghost. That's a ghost role hanging out in the system. Then there's triggers. That's kind of a buzzword at the moment, right? So those are kind of like the parts of ourselves that live inside of ourselves that we've pushed down,
Mm.
but they're still there. And somebody could say something like, if I sound like you're mean teacher from school and I say something with just the wrong tone, you could be triggered and have this massive kind of reaction.
For sure.
And so then that's something we'd call a secret role that pops out. So
Interesting. In the physio, in the pain science world, we call that a neurotag. Yeah. So if someone has had pain experience with associated with another cognitive experience, and that cognitive experience can trigger their pain, even in the absence of any sort of physical stressor, that's quite common, and we refer to that as a neurotag. But
oh wow, so that would that be like, so I'm a sea swimmer, right? So
yeah.
would that be like if I'm always getting stung by jellyfish after August. So would that mean that I'm always a little bit like afraid of going in the water in case I get that sting again?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
had an interesting pain experience where I had sort of shoulder blade pain that was only really triggered by traveling. And so if I was on a Shinkansen or a plane would be torture, I'd have this pain there. And but it got to the stage where, and if I was sitting at my desk at a computer, it wasn't really an issue. But it got to the stage where if I was online booking tickets to go somewhere, the pain would start to come up. So you can have that sort of association as well.
Oh, and that's called a neurotag.
That's the specific the connections between the neurons that trigger the pain response. That is called a neurotag. So you have a specific tag that says back pain, traveling. It might be something else, and once those three are sort of combined, then that's enough to trigger a certain sensory input, which, if it's big enough and associated with other factors, can trigger the output of pain. But anyway, that's
absolutely. I mean, 100%, and that is exactly what we're talking about here. But from the psychological standpoint, P.S. It's all physiology at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be a bit of something like spiritual or something going on there as well, but it's all physiology. I think most of my job is helping people to understand their nervous system reactions to everything.
Yeah.
But there's just lots of different schools of thought around that. So it's really interesting. So the other thing that I thought was really interesting that totally maps to this is like limited performance versus enhanced performance. So some of my clients I've been working with for like 5 or 6 years, right? So I'm not a healer. So that's not my job, right? I'm somebody who people use as part of their daily, it's the same as going to the gym, right? They just use it as part of their daily stuff. So call by call, year by year, month by month, we could be talking about different things. So it could be, is it limited performance or is it enhanced performance? So if you think about somebody who's winning awards, who's got their business up to a certain level, we could be talking about performance enhancement, right? That's it. There's no pain point. It's just like, what happens next? What is it that you want, So I guess that would map to something like if somebody's going to be in a K1 fight versus doing a marathon, it would be a different conversation there. So that's really, really interesting. And then you said something about coping strategies as well. It's like, and again, in terms of coaching, we have to be really mindful not to veer into the therapy area. So I actually have a go-to therapist who, when I feel like we're veering into the therapy area, I will send people, give her, like, she's getting a lot of business from me, but it's a great companion to coaching, right? Actual psychotherapy is. But with people's permission, we will, what I say is, in coaching, it's always about now forward. So what we're doing is we may visit something that happened in the past that's limiting performance or is a coping strategy, but we don't pitch a tent. We pop in, oh, that's that. Okay, let's come back to now, and then use some tools or techniques to kind of take people forward, but we don't hang out there exploring it and going into it. I don't have that skill, or it's outside the ethical guidelines of coaching. So that's interesting, and that's probably where I've made my biggest mistakes in coaching as well, is kind of not being unskilled and kind of knowing that kind of how far to go there. But sometimes it can be with permission from the coaching client. If you kind of just visit, that's where some of the greatest juice can be as well. So I think it's like you isolate if you're talking about physiotherapy, you isolate the pain point and then you look at the full person. And then, of course, in coaching as well, I have to look at the full person and their constellation. So what's happening for them as well. So same for you. It's like, how much resources do they have? Time, money, support around them, people who are reliant on them. What's their what's their daily emotional load like, so are you, so for example, if somebody's at work and they're in the closet, that's quite a lot of an emotional load to have in addition to their workload. So we might talk about that. Or in the closet about ADHD, so they're masking all the time. So we have to talk about that. And so I think that's like, or if somebody's a single parent, or if somebody's a co-parent, or if somebody's going through a divorce, or if somebody's going through a marriage, or all these things, or if their children are leaving home, there's everything around them. Like, so we all have to know what people's kind of the whole system that they're all part of. So the pain point, the performance points, they identify what they want and need from it. So, if I was to come to you to ask for to start working at 360, my needs would be very different to somebody who's going to do like fight night or something like that. So never going to do it.
No, that's fantastic. And again, just to draw parallels, what we refer to as a biopsychosocial model of pain management, and that sort of includes all those aspects that you talked about.
Amazing.
I think we could sort of talk forever about the parallels. And at the end of the day, what we do as physiotherapists is very much coaching, where the goals is to deal with someone's musculoskeletal pain. But I think that the processes are very similar. In terms of your sort of progression now at the business, as I said, congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. I believe that you've changed the name from Sarah Furuya Coaching to Sarah Furuya Creative. I would like you to talk a little bit about that, but also just talk a bit about why you started up the podcast and what the goals were behind that.
Amazing. Okay, so again, I just had this. So Angela Ortiz Petas, who you also know, you were at her wedding as well. She has been doing marketing with me. She's a skilled marketer, and one day she said, "Oh, SFC, which is the kind of logo SFC, Sarah Furuya Coaching, can also mean super flipping creative." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." And I also love using like lots of different in coaching. I like working with people who can get this. And I also like doing this is pulling lots of different people in from lots of different places. So it could be somebody like, I hire you to come and talk to my mastermind group about fitness and body stuff, right? Or and the kind of clients that I love having are the kind of people who can go, I get this. I get why this is beneficial to me. Not like, why the hell are we talking to a physiotherapist when I'm in a coaching program? Do you know what I mean? So it might be that I pull in somebody from from an artist, a writer, a stylist, somebody who's on a board of directors, somebody who's who knows finance well. So I like to pull from all these different places. And then I just started thinking, I really want to go in a more creative direction for myself as well. I started feeling that pull really like strongly. And again, it's a lot of undoing for me, Sam, because I said like I took sciences because I wanted to be a doctor. Actually, that wasn't really what I was supposed to do. So I feel like it's just a lot of undoing of things like stopping drinking, diagnosed with ADHD, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, so I'm really coming into, I'm turning 50. I'm 51 now. I've said that 3 times. There's a Saturday Night Live sketch where they're like, I'm 50. And she's like doing all these stretches, 50 years old. Anyway, so that's the direction in which I went. Why did that's why that's going in there. So basically what I'm doing, Sam, is I'm throwing out this idea, and it's probably going to be SF Creative, not Sarah Furuya. I kind of want to take me out of it.
It's really interesting. I was actually thinking of this is so in the physiotherapy business coaching community, the things you never name a business after yourself, because then you can't sell it, can't step out of it. Alana Jade is one example.
But that's got enough
It has got enough, yeah, and it doesn't actually have a surname. I think it would have.
Exactly.
I don't think Alana Schmid or Alana Gilbert, for that matter, would have worked quite as well for a beauty salon. But yeah, there's always been that advice that you shouldn't have your name. But I think if you are able to sort of flip it, like do what you've done in terms of build yourself up as a sole proprietor, and you be the star of the show, and then gradually sort of move to step back a little bit. But if you still keep the branding somewhat consistent, then you sort of getting the best of both worlds there.
That's such a great point. And, but also I could see all these different parts of the business and I was trying to make sense of it. And then I was like, actually, I want the coaching to be part of a bigger package. So then the podcast's there as well. So far the podcast has kind of been there to support coaching. Because I think and this is why I started the podcast, is because I'm so interested in people's stories. I think they are fascinating. And I think that we learn so much from them. And essentially that's what my whole job is, listening to people's stories, the stories they tell themselves, the way that their story relates, like their backstory relates to their future, the kind of story they want to create in the future. It's all about story, right? Everything. And so I was like, I want to start telling some of these stories. You've had Tracy Northcott on your thing. Like, she's fascinating, and she's such good company as well. And we've known each other for 20 plus years. So I just thought I'm going to have her on as my first guest. And initially, and again, already I had this kind of creative collaboration in mind. My friend Kyle is a videographer, and it started out as video in 2018. And so I pulled Kyle in, and he was doing the video for me. He's a brilliant videographer. And we did a full season before COVID hit, and then we couldn't do video anymore, right? And so it was basically these kind of 20-minute videos with people. I loved them. And it was just people who I thought were really fascinating, but might not necessarily get on a big name podcast. So, a yoga person, a gyrotonic person, a musician, like a person who was a proper rock star, Morgan. He's was in a proper rock band back in the 70s, Mott the Hoople. Who else? Oh, a drag queen friend who's just amazing and really fascinating as well. So I just, again, if you look at the kind of the cast list, that says Sarah Furuya, SF Creative to me, right? That's it. That's my, but that's not also like, I'm not kind of going, oh, and Tia, the photographer. So photographer, a rock star, a yoga person, Tracy, an entrepreneur, it's like, look at that. That's my life. That's society.
Yeah.
We may not see that all the time, but that's the many ways to lead a life, right?
Yeah.
And so then when COVID hit, and Kyle and I were like, we can't do this in the room together at the moment, can we? And we were like, no, and grudgingly stopped. So then I was like, but I still want to tell these stories. So that's when I started the podcast proper.
Yeah.
And that's when I started interviewing people. I think, again, I turned to another fascinating friend, Angela. She was the first person. I knew she would say yes. And then I just lined up a lot of, and it was like people who I found fascinating. We were talking about Chuck Johnson earlier. I knew Chuck 15 years ago or something. We did a lot of corporate training together. He's a great trainer, even though he's now like a stuntman. And what's his is it taekwondo, his sport? Yes.
Yep.
He's just amazing. So I was just looking around and thinking, whose stories do I want to tell? And the further away from my story they are, the more interested I am.
Sure.
So or as interested I am. So I always have a wish list. I've got one here now. But I've put it on hold for now because I'm going through this kind of renaissance. I was like, I think I need some headspace so I did 4 sessions in this season, and then putting it on hold until next January, just because I want to land this year like going, what's going on? What's happening next?
Yeah.
So that's how the podcast started. And then that's it. I love telling people's stories, and I love putting that up against the backdrop of coaching. But now I want to tell the stories as I don't want that to be the backdrop. The backdrop for me is more like a creative urge now.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to follow that creative urge. Coaching will still be there because I think I'm a good coach. What my clients are doing tells me that. That's where the feedback comes from.
Mm.
And I still get asked to go and do corporate workshops. I'm doing one next week and all, stuff like that. But I'd like to have like quarterly events where I pull lots of people together and do work some magic. And that's another thing that I love to see happening in a room is like when that magic happens in a room. Any party has it,
Yeah.
just like you meet somebody or your mind gets opened a little bit or you feel a bit more comfortable around a drag queen or whatever it is, Not that that's not really a goal, especially given what happened in Colorado this week. But it's just to create more creativity and safety and space for people to be more, even if it's still really, I know when I'm in certain rooms, like if I'm going to go and meet the HR director of Mitsui Busan, right? Or or like Tokyo or something like that.
Mm.
I'm not going with this lip. I'm going in like the neatest I can possibly look, the most conservative I can possibly look.
Mm.
If that's what you're doing, but what I love to do is explore around the edges and introduce them to people.
Yeah.
And then we get back into where we are and what you can do. And I feel like that exploration is really important, a really well-examined goal, a really well-examined limitation, a really well-examined, what did you call it? Biopsychosocial,
Yeah.
like that very well examined
Mm.
systemic inquiry is, I feel like, really important. And I did ask one of my clients, like, what is it do you think that sets me apart from, like, think about the other coaches? And they said, in Tokyo, and they said, oh, you're interesting. And that's not for everybody, right? That's not for
Yeah,
everybody.
exactly.
It's the season you're in. And I have a buffet of coaches, right?
Yeah.
I have all different people. Like if I want to make a decision like that, I'll go to this person. If I want to get into the ether, I'll go to this person. If I want to, if I want to look at my knee, I'll come to you.
Mm.
It's like what we have to choose the right person, the right tool for the right job, right? But I feel
Mm.
like I can offer a really eclectic mix of stuff because based on my client roster,
Yeah.
I know that I've taken somebody from here to here.
Yeah.
But I also know that if you want to make me small, or anybody else, if you want to try and make people more modest, I'm probably not the right person for you. I don't want that in my space.
Sure. Yeah.
But also, I know that if you're in this particular room, you probably want to going to act modest just to meet the needs of that room. It's honne and tatemai in Japanese, right? How you really feel versus how you need to show up. That's the conversation, but it doesn't need to be in all areas of life. I don't know. I hope that people can make some sense of what I'm saying here.
Absolutely.
Stream
Yeah.
of constant consciousness. Thanks, ADHD. You are a great gift to me.
That's
Yeah.
super interesting. Well, in one of your episodes, I think, no, I think it was the interview with Angela. You commented that a client had asked, had congratulated you on your 10-year anniversary and said, "Oh, did you ever think that, 10 years ago, could you see yourself having achieved everything that you have?" And you said, "Yeah, absolutely. I knew this was going to happen. I thought it was actually going to be better," which I think is a fantastic way to describe that.
It's so cheeky, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, where do you see yourself being in 10 years? Or is that not something that you really want to, because you feel like you do need to shift and pivot based on what you're seeing and what's happening and the results and everything that's going on? Do you have a basic vision of what you want the business to be in 10, 20 years and where you want to be? Or you just sort of flowing with it and, building that as it comes?
That's again a brilliant question, and the answer is yes, I do. I have a vision, but the vision is not like I constantly. The technique I use is I go into a visualization and visit myself at 61 and at 71, right? So I go and visit myself and I ask questions. and they deliver back it's out of the subconscious, some information to me. So do I have a spreadsheet with a year by year breakdown on it? No. Do I have I have boxes with like 23, 24, 25, yes, on it, just so I can see it.
Yeah.
But right now I feel like it's a resetting time. That's what I feel like right now. It's like a real reset, and I have to trust the process. Anybody does. Like when you started Club 360, you had to trust that people would come and pay you for your wares, right? You already probably knew. So I have to trust, and this is often the case in coaching as well, is trust the process. Trust. And again, I'm just thinking back to like the parallels you draw between the physical bodies. It's like, if somebody's got a bad knee and you're saying to them, you're going to have to do this back exercise, that person has to trust that back exercise is going to have an impact on the knee, right? Because it doesn't necessarily logically look that way. And I think that that's where I'm at right now, is I have to trust that this kind of withdrawing that I'm doing right now, which is terrifying, is like this kind of resetting and reclaiming that I'm doing right now is going to pay back in the future. So I run a 1-year program called FNJ. February is the new January. I'm killing it after 5 years. That's been my money maker. And I just decided that when does this go out?
It'll be in a few weeks' time.
Yes. Okay, good, because I haven't told my clients yet. So
okay, well, let me know when you, because I've got a
no, it's fine. That's on today's to-do list, or this week's to-do list. So yeah, you can keep this in. This is fine. And even if it wasn't, this would be the announcement. So I've just decided that, but obviously something else is going to be birthed out of that, like some other coaching, long-term coaching program, because I really love long-term engagements, because you really get to see the process. So there's that, but I don't know. I think I need to see what comes out of, I would love to own an art gallery. I would love to have an art gallery. I would love to have some way of taking artists who have lower resources because to be an artist, you need time, and time equals money. And it's unless you actually have some kind of benefactor or inheritance, or you've accumulated your own wealth, it's hard, right? So I would love to be able to support artists who aren't super well resourced to find their way forward through coaching and other things. That's not my focus. That's just something that's in because I still want to work. I still love the corporate world. I still love working with entrepreneurs. I still love working with individuals. It's so satisfying and gratifying, and watching people get into coaching and the coaching process. But so that's, coaching will always be the kind of it will always be the leading product, I think, in my kind of portfolio. But what was the question?
Yes, 10 years, 20 years time.
So that's so who knows is the answer. But also, yes. And I think that from this place of sobriety as well, I think that there'll be a lot of things will emerge from that.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. And planning as well. So probably buying a house will be in there, buying property somewhere else will be in there. And physical space feels really interesting, and physical things as well. So who knows? We'll see. But I'm feeling confident today.
Very good. Make sure you don't ask that 71-year-old version of you how the knees are.
No. Well, she'll probably go, you need to go to Club 360 and sort that out. Because 61-year-old me said, turned around, you go in the house and sit down with the version of yourself and have a chat with them and stuff. And on the way out, I was just going out to get the door to come back into the present time. And she just said, Sarah, and I turned around, and 61-year-old me said, you need to manage yourself. And I was right. All right, Captain. And I think that meant like ADHD. You can't really use it as an excuse not to be on your game.
Yeah.
But you need to know how to work with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how to not to mask carefully, but without putting too much pressure on yourself,
Sure.
and so on, and
Yeah.
to understand dopamine levels and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really yeah, 10, 20 years time, I just want to feel more peaceful and satisfied, and still be part of, really, really part of the community at all the levels I can be part of the community of.
Awesome.
I think.
No, that's fantastic. So if people are listening and maybe they do resonate with you and they think that the services you provide might be appropriate for them, what does your sort of coaching program look like? How might they get in touch with you? Are you available for? Are you open to new clients, or how does that all look?
Yeah. So at the moment I would be offering like 6 package engagements. And so that would just, and usually that's 6 months. I find like once a month seems to be enough for people. Me and my coach at the moment are doing once a week.
Yeah.
But it's up to the person. So that's what I'd be kind of offering at the moment. And then in March, I will be opening up some like longer term packages. So I work with like really so I have an invite only group, which is where we all get to really play serious coaching game, where you're already coached. You already come in coached. But then I also offer other programs, and I'm just at the moment thinking about how that's going to look. So it'll probably be like 10 months, 5 months on either side of August. But again, that's in the making. So usually I close out in January, start in February, right? So like now would be like my marketing period. But I'm closing in January and then not opening until March, probably. Maybe April, depending on what my intuition decides, or my logic, depending on like what's going on for me there. And then also the other engagements that I do are corporate engagements. And again, I usually try and do that on a 6-month minimum. Anybody who's been with me before can come back. And I just had somebody come for 2 sessions and who'd already done a couple of 1-year programs with me. They were applying for a job over in the States. They wanted a couple of sessions. They got the job, and I was delighted that she brought me some gifts. The last clothes swap that I ran, I also run a clothes swap. But it's such a, I don't know, I think the kind of work that you and I do is it's such a privilege and honor, isn't it?
It
It
is,
sounds really
absolutely.
cheesy, but it's kind of cool to watch people just getting better.
Yeah, for sure. And if people want to engage with you, are you active on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook? Where can people find you? And also, if people want to have a listen to your podcast, which I would strongly recommend, just hearing stories of really interesting people in Japan and outside Japan as well. How can people find you there?
So sarahfuruya.com is my website. And the legends, if you put in Google search Sarah Furuya Legends, it will immediately take you to that page. I'm having a break from Facebook, and I don't know if I'll ever go back, but I'm still posting through Instagram. And I have a Facebook page, like a coaching page there, that my admin manager manages as well. So any messages come to me, and she's always got her eye on that as well. So we're still kind of present there. I have an Instagram, Sarah Furuya, which is where I just do my kind of daily posts, and Sarah Furuya Creative is where the business stuff goes up, and all the links to everything is in there. And I am on LinkedIn as well. Yes, Sarah Furuya, or Sarah Everett Furuya. But anyway, it's easy or Sarah Furuya Creative. I think there's a business page there as well. But again, that's managed by my admin manager. And so just all the usual places, but I'm currently deciding, do I want to go back to Facebook, because I'm quite enjoying the peace and quiet without it.
It's completely understandable.
So that's it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. I've been very, very generous with your time. I know you're extremely busy.
I'm so sorry. I told you I would go on.
It's fantastic. There's a lot of really useful information in there, and it was great to hear a little bit more about your story and how you actually sort of approach your coaching, which I think is really cool as well. So yes, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, look forward to perhaps speaking again in the future.
Sam, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. You asked me a couple of absolutely killer questions there, which goes to show what a brilliant interviewer you are. So thank you. I'm not just saying that to flatter you either. Genuinely.
No, it's yeah, it was great to have you on it. Lani always speaks very highly of you as a very influential person within the Tokyo business community, and so yeah, I was really keen to get you on, and yes, and thank you again.
Thank you.
It's been great.